That's a culture, right? What's another culture? We all decide what to do. Nobody's in charge. It's democratic. That's how we do things around here. That's a culture, isn't it? That's how we do things around here. If you ever work for a company, you understand the culture. If you go from temple to temple, sometimes you'll find cultures are quite different. Isn't it? You might go to one temple and breakfast is enough to last you for 3 days. Isn't it? And some temples, they don't even have breakfast. It's the way we do things around here. Why do we have breakfast? Because we study all morning. Why do we have big breakfast that lasts till 10 o'clock at night? Because we don't Sangha time. It's the way we do things around here. I was in a temple and my godbrothers would visit. It was another country. And they'd ask me, why are they doing things like this here? And I say, don't ask. It's the way they do things. It's much different from the way we do things in America. So the Americans would come, and they'd always say, why are they doing this? Don't ask. There's no answer other than that's how they do it here. Right? Does that make sense? When you interact with a company, you can feel what they are about. So, culture is also what you feel like when you go into a temple or an organization. You kind of feel it, don't you? That's also what we call brand. People come to your restaurant. They can feel if the waiters are anxiety or the waiters are happy. Right? You ever been in a restaurant? You can feel it's like tense. Or it's very peaceful. You can feel that on airlines. Have you ever gone to a temple and everyone's really happy? Well, for the last 40 years, probably. No, there are happy temples. Yes? Have you ever gone to a temple where everyone's not happy? And they're all complaining? Anyone? I travel to many temples. I have visited many of them. And I can feel it before they tell me. I've been to temples. I can feel the atmosphere in 2 minutes. I just look at the faces of devotees and I think something's wrong. So culture is all. You also feel culture. Does that make sense? Like when you go to Vrindavan, you feel the culture. You go to Mayapur, you feel the culture. You go to Julu, you feel the culture. You go to Chapati, you feel the culture. They're all a little different, isn't it? What does culture feel like? Well, these are some of the things that people will say when they go to a company or a temple. They care about me. They ignore me. They really pushed me to buy something. They listened to me. They were interested in what I felt. They were punctual, flexible, open, closed, friendly, fun, serious, judgmental, bigoted, active, apathetic, kind, rude, joyful, annoyed, etc. Yes? Now, anyone who comes to our temple feels something. Yes or no? And they may feel a lot of these things. And we're going to do a little exercise to kind of discover what they might be feeling. Because I don't think we realize what everyone's feeling. But have you ever felt this way? In a temple? They cared about me. They didn't care about me. They ignored me. They listened to me. They didn't listen to me. It's part of the culture. Right? When I was a young devotee, if you went to the temple president and you said, I feel, that was the wrong word. You don't say I feel. Because he would say, who cares how you feel? I don't care how you feel. That was a culture then. If you had a bad relationship in the early days, if you had a bad relationship with your wife, someone might say, well, that's good, because that will detach you. You shouldn't get too attached to your wife. That was a culture, right? Strange culture. How do we show, how do we teach culture? Culture is shown or taught through shared values, beliefs, attitudes, actions, behavior, and stories. In other words, when you think about a culture, just think about going to a different country. How many of you have been to different countries aside from India? One of the first things you notice is people are different, right? I have a good story for India. I was in a rush. I'd gone to the toilet, right? And people were waiting for me, and I just needed to wash my hands, which for me takes about 3 seconds. Just get the water on my hands, throw the water on my feet, and then I run. And there was this young man, and he was washing his hands like 6 times. Then he was rinsing his mouth about 6 times. Then he washed his feet about 6 times. It took him about 4 minutes after he went to the toilet to just wash. So, a different culture, right? It's the way we do things around here, right? 7 o'clock in India means what time? 8 o'clock in India, 7:30. It's the way we do things. It's the culture. So it's a value that everybody shares. In some cultures, it's okay to lie because that's what everybody does, and it's not seen as a lie, right? It's a shared value, or it's an attitude. Anyway, we'll get into this more, but the point that I want you to understand tonight is that, I think the most significant point, is that whatever culture we create in our temples, people who come to the temples will become affected by that culture. Because usually the culture is what most dominantly controls people. Isn't it? You become the way your environment, unless you're very, very strong, you tend to be nurtured by your environment. Now, I've seen something in our movement which is very disappointing. I've seen people come and develop bad qualities. Qualities that they actually didn't have. Have any of you seen that? That is antithetical to what we're supposed to be doing. Because we allowed a culture to exist within the organization which was not in alignment with what we teach. People developed. In one place I was in, people would say, they would know that after becoming devotees, they became lazy. After becoming brahmacharis, they became lazy. They used to work really hard, and now as brahmacharis, they don't have to work so hard. So they became lazy. Other people would know that they became more critical, more judgmental. Have you noticed that? Tendency to be judgmental, critical, more intolerant than tolerant. So that means that kind of culture is being allowed to exist to some degree. Does that make sense? You had that experience? We have some temples now where the only person at Mangal Arati is the Pujari. Have you been to temples like that? That's a culture. It's allowed to go home. You can live in the temple and not go to Mangal Arati. That becomes a culture. Right? There's some temples, if you don't go to Mangal Arati, no breakfast. If you're sick enough not to get up in the morning, you're sick enough not to eat breakfast. That's a culture. There are some temples where the temple president is at Mangalarti 365 days a year. There's some temples where the temple president, 365 days a year, is not a Mangalarti. It's a culture. And when you become the president of either temple, you will follow the culture of the previous temple president, most likely. Yes? Experience builds culture. Now this is really important. First important point was that people are conditioned by culture to go up or down. But experience, the experiences you have within an organization defines the culture. For example, every example and the corresponding experiences that come from those examples establish the beliefs that foster the culture. The culture is built on the beliefs gained through individuals' experience with the culture. So let me give you some examples. Let's say I think I give these examples. Hold on. Yes, I give these examples. So we're going to do a little interactive work here. Examples of beliefs that come from experiences. So here's an example of an experience. I saw a senior devotee cleaning the temple. This instilled the belief that the higher you go, the more of a servant you become. In other words, he created an experience. That was my experience in the temple, which creates a belief. What's the belief? The belief is, if I want to be a leader, I have to be prepared to do menial service. Now, if I've never seen a leader do menial service, then that experience creates another belief, that if I become temple president, I will never do menial service. Does that make sense? So can you think of examples, either positive or negative, of experiences that create beliefs? Anybody? Yes? Someone, can you get a volunteer to write this down on the board? And then after we write it on the board, you can all go take a picture of it? Would it be better that the board's up here? I think.
Just go back side. Wheels, that's why I put it there. If you want, I can put it back there.
Oh, it'll fall over? Oh, okay. Can we move it out a little bit?
If you want me to put it back there.
I just want to be, I want everyone to be able to see it and take a picture of it. Okay, you had an example?
We see that there's a culture of talking during japa.
Culture of talking during japa. Okay. So, you have an experience. You want to write it? Who's going to write
Pen
it?
is there behind. Behind pen is there.
Okay. The experience is people talk during japa, which I think there should be a monograd in every temple during japa. And if you're going to talk, there has to be like a parameter. You can talk away. So, what's the belief that comes from the experience? That's the important point.
That's all right to do it.
It's okay to do it. Okay. It's okay to talk during. If people are talking during japa, that's the experience which creates the belief that it's okay to talk. So when a new person comes to the temple and you teach them how to chant and they see everyone else talking, then it creates a belief that talking is okay. It creates another belief. It's not that japa is not that important, because if it were, you wouldn't be talking. Right? See, do you see how beliefs create cultures and they come from experiences that you have by seeing? Right? So if you want to emphasize, for example, in this case, the importance of japa, one thing you could do in your temple is not allow anybody to talk in the temple during japa. Okay, what else?
Seeing devotees skipping the morning program. You see devotees skipping the morning program. This is the experience.
Oh, you see devotees at the morning program. Skipping. Okay, skipping. So what is the belief that comes from that?
Morning program.
Skipping the morning program? It's not important.
It is optional.
Okay, then if the belief is morning program is optional, and again I would say it's not that important.
Could do parikrama during Mangalarati.
Parikrama during Mangalarti. Mangalarti is not important. Well, it's kind of the same.
But they are not seeing the Aarti, they are making their own japa.
Yeah. Okay. That's a corollary, maybe a more benign corollary. We see something, and it instills a belief. Morning program's not important. If it were important, everybody would be, the important people would be there. Right? Okay. Yes? Chanting japa during Aarti. And what belief is that? You can do two things at the same time. Save time. It's the same thing, you're not taking it seriously.
What if everybody was doing that?
Everyone's chanting japa during the Aarti. Yeah.
We can think of that.
Said, what if everybody were chanting japa during Aarti? It'd be an interesting.
That's a part of artisan.
Yeah. I want to give one because I think this one's important. Hold on a second. When you want to create culture, you want to create experiences because you know experiences will create beliefs. So you consciously want to do things that will create the right belief. So let's say you're a leader. Like a lot of leaders, they'll sit in the temple and chant all their rounds because they want everyone to do that. And they're conscious that if I do it, it establishes a belief that japa is important. Now, there's something we do in all the temples. It sends a message. And I'm not saying what we do is wrong, but it sends the wrong message. And that is, we honor people who give donations. And the bigger they give, the more we honor them. And there's nothing wrong with honoring them. Right? But you have to understand, it sends a belief. What's the belief? If you want to be recognized in this temple, give money. Because they're the people who get recognized. I come to Mangalarti every day for the last 20 years. No one ever recognized me after Mangalarti. I cleaned the toilet every day for 20 years. I never got recognized. It must not be important. But this guy just joined the movement 2 weeks ago. He gave a donation. Now he's in front of everyone, and he's getting recognized. So if I want to get recognized, I should give money. It's good to recognize him, but you have to understand it comes at a cost if you don't recognize people who come to the temple, who clean, for other things. You're only recognizing one person. We have something going on in some temples that on Janmashtami night at 11:30, they do auctions of deity paraphernalia. So right before Krishna appears, even maybe for an hour, there's a focus on one thing, raising money. And I would say 80% of the people only come to the temple once a year for Janmashtami, and they usually come about 11 at night, and that's what they see. That sends a message, doesn't it? That what does it send? You guys are like really into money. That's what you're into. I mean, that's what I would think. Yes? Does that make sense? Yeah. So the point is, you have to be careful about the beliefs you instill by your actions, because actions instill beliefs. Everything we do will instill a belief in people who come to the temple. Right? Like in America, people are very conscious about the planet, and if you use polystyrene or plastic, it really disturbs them. And some people will never even come back to the temple because you didn't use something which is biodegradable. Did you know that? Yeah. It's a statement. You eat on plastic, you don't care about the earth. And you're spiritual. There's a dichotomy there. You see? So as long as you're teaching something, but doing something else, you create confusion in people's minds because they don't see what you're teaching. Okay. What else? Yes. When we use ahimsa, we don't use ahimsa. People say we're hypocrites if we don't use milk and protect the cows. Yeah, it's true. They do say that. And there's a good argument for that. It's true. Sometimes we don't get milk to protect the cows. Yes? Lord, oh, very good. So she's saying she would see devotees glorifying one another, and that developed a belief that if I want to please Krishna, I should glorify the devotees. So it's possible. Yeah. Yes, the last one. Loud. I don't know if I can hear you. You want to come up? We don't have another microphone? A wireless or anything? Anyway, yell it out. Okay. When the parents come,
Kids like it's a problem. Kids feel like they problems with their parents because they want to be in the left side.
oh, when you mistreat your parents when the parents come to the temple, you ignore them. When you ignore your parents when they come to the temple. Oh, devotee parents. Oh, devotee parents ignore their kids when they come to the temple. They want to come to the program and let their kids. Oh yeah, so it gives the impression that kids aren't important. Okay, I got it. Okay. Anyway, you understand the principle? Actions produce beliefs. No, experiences produce beliefs. Beliefs produce actions. Actions produce results. You want to take a picture? Anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to say that again. I want you to get this. Whatever we do in a community gives people an experience. A good one or a bad one. Right? Experience produces beliefs. This is good, this is what we should do or we shouldn't do. Beliefs produce actions. Actions produce results. Experience, belief, action, result. You got that? Everybody say it? Experience, belief, action, result. Experience, belief, action. Now, if you understand this, and you're a leader of any organization, even a parent, you would be very conscious about what you do because you know what you do is going to instill people with beliefs. Like sometimes my father would tell little lies in order to save a little money or get himself out of a problem. So what did that instill with me? It's okay to lie. As long as, it's going to get you out of trouble or save you money. Right? So then I lie, and it produces a result. In any temple that is having any kind of difficulty, you can go back to culture. There's some problem within the culture. People aren't getting along. Somewhere in the culture, it's okay. Okay. Can you give examples of teaching and behavior that's out of alignment? Like what do we teach in Islam but we don't see it normally within our culture? I gave one example. We teach cooperation, but devotees are creating factions. You see that. It's quite common, isn't it? Devotees aren't getting along. But if you go to the class, it's all about how Prabhupada wanted us to cooperate. So, what are we being taught that we don't see as much as we should? Yes, microphone. I can't. I've got music on. Okay, what's the question? If you have a question, there's no microphone, you have to come up. Okay. They work together.
Devotees in having experience of Krishna and they just like believe.
This is different. This is different. Yeah, you're getting too philosophical. This is not philosophy. This is practical management. That's a different topic. But just try to understand it in this context for this practical. It's a different definition of belief. You're talking about faith in something you can't see. We're talking about inculcating something tangible, that I believe this because I see this. Okay, what's an example of something we teach that we don't model so well?
We say that our philosophy says Bharana Karmi Bharana Purna. Very nice food. We should be very good clothes. But in
We should eat nice food and we should be good cooks, but
we see even temple presidents and big sannyasis. We see that, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that we should eat good food, neither should we wear good clothes. But we see our sannyasis and even temple presidents, they are like indulging in very tasty and even
we should eat simply and we don't eat simply. Not temple presidents only and sannyasis, brahmacharis also. Actually, this is just my observation that if you want to practice celibacy, don't eat in a temple because the diet is not conducive to celibacy. Is it? I don't think it is. You know, there was a cereal in America, it was called the Breakfast of Champions. Sometimes I look at the devotee breakfast and I'm like, breakfast of progenitors. It's not the breakfast of celibates. Isn't it? Do you ever think like that? There are a lot of contradictions in our philosophy, in our practice from what we do. Yeah. Yes?
If we put Krishna at center, then all the problems of society will be solved.
If you put Krishna in the center,
Whole world's problem will be solved.
whole world's problems, and what happens? We have more problems than the rest of the world. Yeah. The idea that you're Krishna conscious, well, I think the assumption is that we are Krishna conscious when we're not. And that's why we have problems. But I think your point is we're simplifying it. Without being practical.
Also, most famous is Tiranadapi Suni Jaina Tarulapi Krishna.
Yeah.
Preach and
Be more humble than a Vedic priest. Okay. Okay, let me elaborate on that. What he's saying is that sometimes we see, not everywhere with everyone, but sometimes we see that as you progress in Krishna consciousness, you become a little proud. Have you noticed that? Anybody? Am I the only one? You become a little proud. Proud. As you advance, you become more. As you advance, you become more proud. Have you seen that? Yes. That's a contradiction, isn't it? So our philosophy says that as you advance, you become more humble. Anyway, you get the idea. That we need to be conscious that the culture is reflecting what we're teaching. And you just brought up some examples where the culture is not reflecting what we're teaching. It's reflecting the opposite. That confuses people, don't you think? Have you ever seen a devotee get really upset about nothing? Anybody? Only one. Only one. That just happened to me and so upset about something. He wouldn't relent. Couldn't understand why he was upset. Do you know what that does when somebody who's coming to Krishna consciousness sees that? What does that do to them? To their faith? It confuses them? Does it? Yes? Don't you think? How many of you here are teachers? Raise your hand. Teachers, preachers. Teacher, preacher. Raise your hand if you teach or preach. Okay. Teachers, have you noticed that if you try to teach something in a temple whose culture is antagonistic to what you're teaching, you can't teach it? Have any of you noticed that? And it almost becomes like you're criticizing people in the temple because you're saying it should be this way, but in your temple it's this way. And it almost comes out like a criticism. Does that make sense? You can't effectively teach if you don't have a culture that represents what you're teaching. Yes? Does that make sense? Okay, let's give some examples of teachings and behavior that are in alignment that we see in our temple. Like the devotee who made class about austerity rises at 2 and eats once a day. That's good. Right? So when he says do austerity, you can take that because you know he doesn't. You want to hear a funny story? Raise your hand if you want to hear a funny story. This might be the funniest story you'll ever hear in your life. There's one devotee, I won't mention his name, but whose initials are Achyutananda Swami. So, well, he's probably young. So, he lived in India, and he was like thinner than I was in India. And then he moved back to America, and he started growing. And he became quite plump, to say it mildly. He became fat. So I was in New York, and he was the sannyasi, and he was giving class. And the whole verse and purport was about how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not like to see fat disciples. Because he was worried that fat disciple means you're overeating. So Achyutananda is a comedian. Like everything he says practically is funny or witty. So he reads the verse, he reads the purport, and then he says, no comment. What else can he say? How many of you have ever given a class about a topic or a practice that you don't follow? Raise your hand. How did you feel when you gave that class? Like a hypocrite. Pretty miserable. I'll give you a boost. Yeah, that's good also. Krishna chose that verse for you. Okay, so can you give some examples of things we see in our movement that are aligned? Where what we're teaching is actually going on? We tell people to chant Hare Krishna and we chant Hare Krishna. Punctuality, yeah, be punctual. Sincerity, deity worship, yes. Cleanliness, at least of the temple. Prabhupada walked into the Brahmacharya ashram unannounced. Just walked in the temple unannounced. Walked right into the Brahmacharya ashram. Walked out of the Brahmacharya ashram and made a declaration. Brahmacharya means dirty. That was his declaration. But at least temples going. Yes, what else? What else is in alignment with what's going? That's a tough question. No, what else? Book distribution. We say distribute books. Some temples. You're speaking about your temple. What else? Go everywhere, go, spread Krishna consciousness. Okay, so some things we're aligned with, some things we're not. Some temples are more aligned, some temples are less aligned.
Take prasad and we take prasad.
Yeah. And we tell the ones to take prasad, they take prasad.
We tell the outside people to offer food, we are at least offering up.
Yeah, they're offering it. Okay. If we are not living what we're teaching, we're making it difficult for people. We're confusing them. It's hard for them to build faith. And Bhavananda tells a story. Before he learned Bengali, Prabhupada asked him to preach in Bengal. And said, Prabhupada, I don't speak the language. Prabhupada said, they don't care what you say. They're just looking to see what you do. That's it. So, I read a book by a well-known self-help guru. And he said something very interesting. He said, when you're teaching people, they're all thinking, does this guy do what he says, what he's telling us to do? Isn't that interesting? That's what people are thinking. You're giving a class and they're thinking, can you do what you say, what you're telling me to do? And if you do, it has power. And if you don't, it disappoints them. And then they think, he's giving the class and he can't do it, and he's expecting me to do it? So your faith comes from seeing that people do what you tell them to do, isn't it? Are we having fun? We get to make fun of ourselves. Is that fun? If you don't make fun of yourself, you're just going to go home and cry. Okay. Culture must align with teaching. To effectively teach, we need a culture that models what we teach. If not, what we teach will be dwarfed or undone by what we do. This is a very important point. My experience is that I cannot effectively teach unless the culture supports what I teach. Like if we do a japa workshop in a temple, and the leaders want to support it, and they say, okay, we're going to do this and that to facilitate japa, it works so much better than if people say, oh, that was nice, but whatever. Does that make sense? What experiences do we want people to have? Okay. So this now it really gets fun now. Depressingly fun. I'm going to depress you a little bit before I get to that. Is that okay? We teach through our culture, through the experiences people have, and thus the beliefs they gain. When people associate with us in a temple program, festival, what experiences do we want them to have? Okay, so we need someone to write this on the board. Well, when people come to the temple, what experiences or beliefs do we want them to have? We're honest. Well, positive, you have to be specific. Yeah, positive, but that devotees are honest.
Devotees are happy.
Devotees are happy.
We do what they say.
Oh, we're revolutionary clean. Happy, honest, revolutionary clean. No? Revolutionary clean. What else? Kind. They see devotees are kind to each other. Oh. They're not being judged. They're not being judged, or we're not judging one another, or both. They're not being judged, we're not judging our brothers. What else? Follower. Follow. We follow, we practice what we preach. We follow what we teach. We respect each other. We have a service attitude.
Very caring.
We're caring. positive contribution to society. You care about the guests. You care about you. Yeah. Yeah, our lifestyle and what we teach is the same. Oh, we're humble. What else do we want them to experience? Well, I want to make this point. If you know anything about branding, branding is what you feel about a company. Like that little logo on the car that says BMW makes the car look really good, doesn't it? And the one that says Ford, that car doesn't look as good, even if the car looks exactly the same. If I had Photoshop, I would take a Ford and Photoshop a BMW logo on it. Take a BMW and Photoshop a Ford logo on it. And I would ask you, which car do you like better? And you'd all say, I like the BMW better. Wouldn't you? I would put a Mercedes logo on it. You even like that better. Right? But the thing about branding, the mistake we make is you can't tell people what your brand is. They tell you what your brand is by coming to your organization and having experiences like this. If they have these experiences, this is your brand. You can't say our brand is that we're honest, we're kind, we're humble, we practice what we preach. You can't say that. You have to do that. And if you do that, that's the experience they get. Yes? Okay, let's go to the next one. This is an interesting question. Prepare for the next question, ladies and gentlemen. This is a ruin your day. You have nightmares. What experiences do they actually have? When people associate with us, what are some experiences they sometimes have which are antagonistic to the previously mentioned values? Now, you can only speak from your own experience. And I understand in some temples, maybe it's only the former. But I suspect it probably isn't entirely the former. So if any of you have experiences in temples you've been in, where people come and have experiences which are not what you would expect to have. Yes? We are not punctual. We're talking about us, not them. We're not punctual.
They've had that experience.
Oh, they have the experience. We're not punctual. Okay. Nobody's ignorant. They couldn't answer all my questions. Oh, ignorant of worldly things. Okay. Not caring. We care about prasadam, that's for sure. They don't care about me. They don't feel cared. Okay. What else? Not humble. Not humble? Is that what you said?
Some ulterior motive behind.
Somewhere, what?
Ulterior motive. Ulterior motive.
Oh, their motives are not pure.
Like they're after money.
After money.
Donations.
False sense of renunciation, it's not real. Forcing books on people. Oh, ISKCON is what?
Only for rich people.
Only for rich people. Mean they don't talk to you unless you give a quick donation? You know what I found? It's kind of fun. Yeah, ISKCON definitely finds every rich person. I can guarantee you that. Because I was trying to raise money from rich people, and there's no rich people that go to the temple that haven't been already asked many, many times. So we are definitely good at that. That's for sure. Yes? Lack of service attitude. Lack of service attitude.
Duplicitous.
Ooh. Duplicitous. You say one thing and you do another. What? You could stay in any temple in ISKCON for the rest of your life if you become a Mahatma.
They brainwash young boys
ashram boys to leave their families. That's true. We do. That's not so bad. Not always. Yes. Too fanatical. Self-centered. Self-centered, fanatical. Okay. All right. So, I want to point out something very, very simple. If you just go home to your temple with these two charts, or you can remember basically, and say, this is what we want, let's discuss what's actually happening, and let's discuss how we can make the first chart happen, why the first chart isn't happening. What are we doing to give people the impression of the second chart? Anything that's on the second chart, what are we doing to give that impression? Because you create the impression by what you do. You can create right impressions or wrong impressions. Isn't it? So, one devotee says, I don't think we should only honor people who give money at the Sunday feast. I think we should honor people who clean the temple, who clean the toilet, who come to the morning program every Saturday and Sunday, etc., etc. Because that creates a different impression. People will no longer feel that I'm only recognized if I give money. This is one little thing you could do. And then you could start thinking, so many things you could do, right? When people come to the temple, you greet them, so happy to see you. When they leave, you say, you're leaving so soon? Can't you stay a little longer? I'm so happy you're here. Now the thing I want to point out, and I think this is very important, is if we decide to do that, but it's not genuine, then it's worse than not doing it. Because what we want to train ourselves is to be genuine, right? So say, I want to create a culture which reflects Krishna consciousness, but it has to be genuine in us. You could say, I think we should have an appreciation day, so that you appreciate people once a year. That's a bit artificial, don't you think? It has to be more natural. So, here's a principle of culture. Where does the culture exist? The culture exists in the heart. And if we look at our temples and say, we have more going on the second chart than the first chart, then we have to look at ourselves. Because we're the ones in the temple. That means something's going on in our heart. Isn't it? If people don't feel appreciated, then am I not somewhat responsible? If people don't feel cared for, am I not somewhat responsible? So it's not just legislation, but you have to go deeper to ask, why do we have this culture? Anyway, does that make sense?
I have a question
Yes.
regarding this. You mentioned that when devotees leaving, you should ask like that, please stay more. But if more devotees have to be accommodated, more guests are coming, then we have to ask Prabhuji, when are you leaving? And so it's a dilemma, how to serve the devotees.
He said, sometimes there are too many people at the temple, so instead of saying, please don't leave, you say, please leave. That's a good problem.
As you said, we have to be more genuine in our approach, how we do things.
Yes.
But we have heard about one more formula, that fake it till you make it. So, how it applies.
Okay, he wants to know about fake it till you make it. I'll tell you that later. It's on one of the slides. Okay? Let's see what else is there. What is the real problem in creating an aligned culture? I already gave you the answer. The problem is me. Now, we know there are many problems in the Hare Krishna movement. You agree? You've noticed them, right? Did you? Am I the only one who noticed them? There are problems, right? Which is kind of depressing. It's saying that we're all devotees, there should be problems. So if I ask you, what's the real problem? Then you have to say, it's not him, her, this, that, it's me. I'm the problem. Does that make sense? So Mother Teresa was asked, what is the biggest problem in the world that you can find? The problem is that I am a sinner. And so what's the problem? The problem is I'm not a pure devotee. Isn't that the problem? Yes? Is it? So if we're looking at the culture and it's not the way we want it, we have to start looking at ourselves. The world gets better, think of it. The workshop is essentially about improving ourselves because culture resides in the hearts of devotees. Unless we improve ourselves, we cannot improve the culture. Okay, now we're going to do a little exercise. I want you to think, or if you have paper, write down your values, your beliefs, what's important to you. No question. We might have to wait till after 8:30. So, for example, what is important? What do you value? Cow protection, studying the Bhagavatam, rising early, chanting japa, being kind to devotees. Just think of 5 things that you value, 5 or 10 things that come to mind that you value. Being a good wife, husband, good mother, good father. Being humble, living without false ego, being pure. Priority to myself. Giving money to Krishna. Serving the Vaishnava. Being sober. Grounded. Balance. Clean. So you just need 5. If you have 5, that's good. Okay. Now, you have your list on the left. Now imagine we had a video of your life for the last year. And we hired a crew, a professional crew. And they were going to go over all the footage. This is everything you did in the last year, and everything you said. Every interaction you had. Everything you ate, everything you read, everything you watched on the internet or television, every movie, every book you read. Everything was there. And there was this professional crew, and they were given an assignment to answer the question you just answered. What do they believe? But you can't tell them what you believe. They can only understand what you believe by looking at what you do. So let's say, you say, I believe in the importance of japa. And every morning you get up and do yoga for 2 hours. And then you take breakfast, and then you answer email, and then you chant japa. So they're not going to say that, because they didn't see that. Now you might think that that's your priority, but they didn't see that, so they won't say that. You might say, I value being kind. And they see you arguing with some wall over rupee, this or that, and you got cheated. No, I don't really see that they're kind. So, what I want you to do is now write down what you think that group of 10 people watching your life for the last 10 years would write down as what you feel to be, they feel that you value. And if you get the left and right list together, you're aligned. And if you get the right and left list off, you're not aligned, or you're semi-aligned. So this is an exercise for you. You're not going to tell anybody. It's just think in your mind or write down what you think they would put on your list of what you believe. And just be honest. You know, I believe in morning sadhana, and you get up at 7:30. They're not going to say that. Right? They're going to say, this guy really likes to sleep. If any of you are getting depressed doing this exercise, I always travel with Prozac. Because this exercise gets some people depressed. Anyway, I don't think we have to do it deeply, but you understand the principle. Now I want to tell you something. Just about our nature, psychological nature. We're not always aware of what we do. And from doing this exercise, I think you can tell that we're not always aware of what we do. And I want to tell you a story that illustrates this. And it's a very interesting story. But there's something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance means what you do and what you think you're doing are not always the same. Like someone will say, why do you always do this? And you'll say, I never do that. No, you do. I see you doing it all the time. I don't do that. I never do that. I would never do that. What are you talking about? Are you accusing me of doing that? You have that experience? Yes? So, there's a nice story about this. There was a girl who used to make her own packaging, so when she go to the store, she could be eco-friendly and not have plastic. So she'd make her own. She was totally into being, what do we call it? Eco-friendly? What's the better word? Anyway, she was totally into ecology. And she'd go to school and pull out her packages, her own packages she made, and she'd watch other people drink water out of plastic bottles and eat their whatever pasta in a plastic cup. And she'd go crazy and think, dude, you're so stupid. You're ruining the earth, all this plastic. And it just drive her crazy. So she prided herself on being a green, Miss Green. And after months and months of doing this, one day she opened her refrigerator, and inside her refrigerator, she realized there were so many items in plastic containers or plastic bottles, and she never realized it. And she'd been opening that refrigerator every day, how many times a day, and looking inside, and she never saw the plastic. Isn't that interesting? You understand? When you think you're a certain way, you will tend to notice your actions to be the way you think you are, even if they're not. Why are you always getting so upset? I never get upset. What are you talking about? I never get upset. You're crazy. Isn't it? Yeah. So it's called cognitive dissonance. So we have a problem in that when you become Krishna conscious, a devotee would never do anything bad. Yes or yes? Devotee means good. Now I'm a devotee, so how is it possible I could do something bad? It's not. Therefore, I can do something bad and not be aware that I've done something bad because devotees don't do anything bad. The cognitive dissonance. Just as Miss Green could not do anything bad for the environment, and it took her months to realize that she actually was. And she didn't realize while she was doing it that she was doing it. Does that make sense? Cognitive dissonance. ISIL is this extreme example of cognitive dissonance. You can kill people because that's service to God. Kill innocent people because that's service to God. That's an extreme example. And there's nothing wrong with it because it's for God. Right? So, one of the things I just want you to become aware of is become more aware of where you're in alignment and where you're out of alignment. Because I think a lot of us are out of alignment in ways that we're not aware of it. We're not always as nice and kind and caring and loving and forgiving and humble as we may think we are. You agree? So if we're going to create a culture that reflects our teachings, we have to start with ourselves, and the first step is just be aware. Famous story I tell many times, but it illustrates this principle very, very well. 1974, a devotee wants to leave his wife and take sannyas. He's maybe 26, she's 25 or so. He's got a 1-year-old son. He writes Prabhupada a letter, I want to take sannyas. Prabhupada writes back something which is so obvious. You would think, how this devotee didn't understand this. Prabhupada said, you have a wife and a 1-year-old son. Did you not think that taking sannyas would put them into any difficulty? And the answer is, no, he didn't think of that for 1 second. Isn't that weird? So then Prabhupada said, he quoted the verse of the Gita, he for whom no one is put into difficulty is very dear to me. And Prabhupada said, have you not considered this verse? So we're sitting here thinking, how could someone be so stupid to write their spiritual master to ask for permission to leave a marriage after a couple of years with a wife who is a devotee who distributes books every day and a 1-year-old son? Right? That's cognitive dissonance. He thought he was doing that out of devotion and surrender to the preaching movement of Lord Chaitanya. And what he was doing an act which would be considered even by an average person on the street immoral, at least. Isn't it? Without thinking this is the highest. You understand? So we can justify doing wrong things in the name of devotional service and not realize. That's the problem. Does that make sense? Yes?
When we join, the parents never agree. They are very unhappy. Is that wrong? Because we are placing them in difficulty? They will want us to get married and all these things.
He said his parents wanted to get married and all these things. And now he's putting them in. All these things means house, car, job, bank account, fancy clothes, gold jewelry for the wedding, etc. And now he's upsetting his parents. So I don't think that's cognitive dissonance. I think you're very conscious of what you're doing. And you're not unconsciously hurting them. You're consciously hurting them. But there's a difference. Every case is going to be different. No, it's not. Because if the answer is when you don't know the answer is ask your spiritual master. That's my answer. Every case is different. Right?
And Lord Chaitanya also left his young wife and
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. I wrote a similar letter to Prabhupada when I had a 1-year-old son. Hare Krishna. I wanted to leave my wife so badly. I had a severe case of cognitive dissonance. And Prabhupada said, I do not want to give sannyas to anyone whose first is not an ideal householder. So first become an ideal grihastha, then you take sannyas. Your case is different. Yes.
So in trying to align ourselves to this, but then we feel like our senses are perfect, we make mistakes, we tend to be in illusion before the effect. So,
How do we become self-aware? Yeah. Very good question. So Mahadevi is asking, how do you become more self-aware? I can only speak from my experience. My experience is that when you want to become self-aware, Krishna makes you self-aware. And when you don't, you can't see it. And nobody can make you see it. Yes?
But if you're trying to become self-aware and you feel that you are, but you're still dealing with the four defects of the body and the mind.
And Krishna can enlighten you. That's the four defects of conditioned souls, but Krishna illuminates you from within. So, we can say, as a devotee advances in humility, there's less ego getting in the way to prevent the devotee from sinning. But I have a lot of experience with non-devotees doing this kind of work, and they can see it, because they're willing to see it. And I think one of the problems we have in our society is we're sometimes afraid to be vulnerable because people expect us to be on a certain level and we don't want them to know we're not. And that's probably one of the biggest problems we have. And it's going to, if we don't deal with it, many devotees will fall away because of problems that they can't talk with anybody about because out of fear they'll get no sympathy or they'll get criticized. Actually, I have to admit that over the years, I've studied a lot about self-development psychology, and one of the ways I studied about it was by attending workshops myself to see what professionals were doing. And in those workshops, the people were incredibly open, on the average, more so than the average devotee. Because I think we have an environment where it's considered a little bit unkosher to be too honest. And we have another problem in ISKCON is there's no confidentiality. Because if you tell somebody something confidential, it's very unlikely they won't tell somebody else. Maybe like 99.999% of the time, someone else is going to hear it. And as soon as someone else is going to hear it, someone else will hear it. And we also said we have a tendency to be judgmental because we have expectations. You're a senior devotee. I have expectations for you. You have expectations for me. It may be difficult for me to admit my faults. It may be difficult for you to admit your faults because you'll fear that I will judge you. And if I don't trust you, I also fear you will tell other people. And then I lose face. And I don't want to lose face because everybody thinks I'm a great devotee. So I'll just keep my lips shut. And then I can pretend and keep everybody happy. But my problems won't get solved that way because I need to discuss them. So I think there's this philosophy, it's a psychology, which is that if I'm honest, people won't like me. If they know what I'm really like, they won't like me. So it's better I don't let them know. But that's not true. People don't like people who are pretentious. They like people who are honest. And when you are honest about where you're at, people appreciate that because they see the humility. Just like we have our godbrother Jayananda, and Jayananda would always talk about what was wrong with him. I'm so this, I'm so that. I don't have any devotion. He'd work like 18 hours a day. He'd sleep 4 hours. I lived in the same temple room myself. Slept 4 hours a night. And he would always say, I'm not a very good devotee. I don't know much about the philosophy. Yeah. And everybody loved him because he was so straightforward and honest. So it's not true that people won't like you if you're honest. But somehow we created that environment where we're afraid we'll be judged. So we talk about devotee care. This is one of the fundamentals of devotee care, is be able to listen without judgment and confidentiality. It's one of the best ways to care for Christ. I'm dealing with a disciple. He has a sexual problem. I said, go to Sexaholics Anonymous. It's a 12-step program. The same version of Alcoholics Anonymous, Sexaholics Anonymous. He's been going to the program. He said, I've never seen such honest people in my life. They're so open about their problem. And he's been having realizations that he's never had before. And he's conquered his problem for the first time. He's been chanting Hare Krishna for years. He needed that sangha of honesty to be able to talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, you can't get over it. And he's writing me letters every few days with his realizations, amazing realizations. And he's saying, this problem, this sexual problem I had, is way deeper than sex. And now by talking about it, I realize what it is. So I think that's important. How did we get on that? What were you asking about? How to be self-aware? Yeah. Yeah. We need friends we can be self-aware with, who will also help us be self-aware. Yes.
So what's the solution for lack of confidence?
Yeah, but I think solutions are all about culture. In other words, if we look at our culture and say, here are the problems, I can't be honest without being judged. I don't want to be honest because I'm afraid if I'm honest, I'll be kicked out of the temple rather than helped. It's a problem. It's part of the culture. So the solution, I think all the solutions should go back to the culture and change the culture so we can have a culture of honesty. Like, for example, if you have a culture in a temple where leadership doesn't want feedback, if you give feedback, you're going to get a negative reaction, right? So if you get one negative reaction because you made a suggestion, what's your experience? They don't want it. So you shut down. Right? And your belief is, don't give feedback because I don't want it. Maybe they do want it, they just didn't like your suggestion. But you have no way of knowing that they want more feedback because of your experience. Right? So we have to change that environment. So if you want people to open up, we have to create a culture where they won't be judged. There'll be people who will listen to them, and people who are sworn to confidentiality. You have to create that culture. So you have to talk about it. If the leadership wants feedback, they have to communicate that. They have to welcome it. They have to give feedback back to the people who gave feedback about the feedback you gave and what we're doing. These are just things, if you want to create the culture, you have to do. Because we're saying culture is created by how it's modeled, especially by leaders. So whatever they model, that's what the culture that people will follow. It's good to give feedback, it's not good to. It's good to be honest, it's not good to be honest. It's good to make suggestions, it's not good. So if you see something's missing in the culture, we have to point it out and make the changes. Does that make sense? It's too difficult. Well, let me just back up a little bit. Every temple, every organization, every family has a culture. Culture happens. You don't create it, it just happens. But you can build a different culture together with people. And so, culture is not created by one person who tells everybody what to do. Culture is created by a group and saying, this is what we would like to do as a group, and then the group participates in things. That's how culture is created. So you get enough people that want to create a certain culture, and they're willing to follow the values of that culture. That's how you create it, or build it. Co-created. Any culture that's trying to be created from the top down, it never works. Because nobody feels like it's the culture they want. It's the culture they're told. Does that make sense?
But Krishna says, Yedid Adarit Srishtas. Yedid Adarit Srishtas.
Yeah.
Top to down.
The examples they said, true. But the culture, but the examples they set may not be exactly the way you want the culture to be. So that doesn't, maybe they set an example of austerity, but it's alienating certain people. So you have to work with the culture. So other people set other examples that are relatable to everybody. The point I'm making is, if you work in an organization with a group, because you say, just like we're in this classroom right now, there's a certain culture of the classroom. There's a certain culture of the temple. There's a certain culture in the department. What's the culture? It's created by the people in that department, in that temple, isn't it? Everyone together.
But is it that the department head may not be able to influence the whole temple, but his behavior will reflect upon
it will. It will. But that's part of culture happening without it being created, without it being consciously made. In other words, the point I'm making is there's a culture. It may not be the culture you want because you haven't decided what the culture is that you want. So you just have a culture the way it is. May be good, may not be good. The leader may be good, may not be good, and it's the way it is. But that may not be the way you want it. Right? Doesn't every temple have a culture? Automatically?
So if it's the way it is, I can correct it, because I agree with the Krishna. It's a bigger thing. We may all want to change, but it's dependent on
Well,
the bigger thing.
the point of this class was to realize how the culture affects everything. So that, understanding that, we can try to design the culture we want, analyze the culture we have, and define the culture we want, and then look at the steps we need to take to model that culture so that it goes down. Like for example, I was told when Rana Swami's yatra came to Mayapur, where I live, that the organizers of the senior devotees who organize that yatra, they all cook. That's their service. And I thought, that's really nice. They're all cooking. So I got the message that by cooking, they sent a message. And it was obviously conscious. It wasn't, I'm sure they like to cook. But they were also washing the pots. They were doing everything and cutting the vegetables. So I think they wanted to send a message consciously that even the leaders will do this. Right? So that's consciously creating culture. You want that message sent out that when you become a leader, you know what you're going to do? You're going to be cooking and washing pots also on the next yatra. That's what our leaders do. You're not going to be sitting on the big soft seat driving a Mercedes to go out on a program run, but you're going to be in the kitchen. So when you define the values you want, then you think, how can we teach those values to the devotees? Right? And then there's actions you can take that will demonstrate it. Like you might say, I think we should honor these devotees who do these humble services. So then, Janardhan Maharaj, every morning he makes an announcement about somebody who did some humble service. It's creating a different culture. So you have to think, what can you do, right, to create the culture? I have can I give an example? Think of book distribution, right? So you want to create a culture in book distribution. Now, you and I did book distribution during a time when sometimes the culture wasn't so good, where people would get books and they weren't happy because we kind of pushed them too much. Or we were just thinking about getting the book and getting the money, right? So let's say you as a Sankirtan leader said, we need a new culture. And I'm the president, and I said, well, what's the culture you want? He said, I want to create the culture where everyone who gets a book is very happy that they met a devotee, that they're very inspired to read the book, that they walk away thinking, I met a really nice person, and that I got their name and I'm going to follow it. I want to create that culture. And I said, well, how will we create that culture? And say, well, I want to train the devotees. I know how to distribute books this way. I want to show them, because a lot of devotees they're just after money. So I think we need to create more of an attitude to help devotees understand that if people have a good impression of us, they're more likely to read the book, and they're more likely to get something out of it. So we start talking about it. And then we start telling stories about how you distributed books that way. Because storytelling creates culture. Do you know that? The more stories you tell about the values, it creates culture. So we do that, and that's kind of what happened in the 90s. The culture of book distribution changed. Didn't it? So you have to know what the culture is, and then what do we have to do to model it, right? And if people on top are pushing people, and people are getting upset, then you can't change the culture, because the leaders have to be aligned. So you say, this is what I want. Everyone in the Sankirtan department has to say, yeah, this is what we want to create. Isn't it? Like Vaisheshika created a culture of book distribution in his temple. Why? By emphasizing it, by facilitating it, by talking about it, by giving it importance. Yes? Let me just see what I have left here. Maybe there's something good. Okay. This is just an idea here. You have a feeling and you have a value. And so alignment would be to act based on the value rather than the feeling. I feel resentful, but I'm going to forgive. I'm angry, but I'll be compassionate. So, we have values, but our emotions aren't always aligned, and we want to align our emotions with our values. Don't we? Isn't that the goal? Does that make sense? Not one devotee in the Hare Krishna movement should have one drop of resentment in their heart. Because every devotee believes that whatever happens to them is a reaction to their past actions. Right? In theory. Yes? That's our value. Forgiveness. Well, ultimately, nothing to forgive. Nothing went wrong. It's only a reaction to what it did. So we're always going to be battling between what we value and what we feel. And that's where we get out of line. Yes or yes? Okay, let's go fast. Just want to finish. See what's here. Fake it till you make it. Okay, answer your question. It is usually easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. That's called fake it till you make it. Why do you fake it till you make it? Because you have to act as if you have already achieved it. So, the path to perfecting a characteristic is paved with the practice of that characteristic. The path to blank, humility, is paved with the practice of humility. The path to forgiveness is paved with the practice of forgiveness. The path to compassion is paved with the practice of compassion. Right? So even if you say, I don't feel like it, practice it, because that's what we're supposed to do, and then you'll feel like doing it. I don't feel like bowing down. Bow down anyway, because you'll feel like it. Does that make sense? If you wait till you feel like it, you may never do it. So, if we want to align our culture, when we don't feel like it, at least we're willing to practice our cultural values. And if everyone practices it, even if we don't feel like it, then we're changing the culture. But if we all act in how we feel, then we're just bringing in the culture we came from into ISKCON and compromising our culture. Does that make sense? Yes, okay, it's all over. I could have done more, but we're late. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to make you aware of the effects of culture and how it comes down and how we can consciously create it. You have to take it from here and start doing something. And of course, individually, we have to do our best. And if anyone has any questions, I'll just sit up here and you can ask me. And then, thank you very much.